Alison Brie, you star in the Netflix series Glow as Ruth Wilder, a struggling actress who decides to join a professional wrestling circuit. Were you familiar at all with the real Glow before this opportunity came about?
No, not at all. Not at all. But that was the first thing that I learned about the show. And even before I read the script, I was looking it up online. So, like, the first call I got was Genji Cohen is producing a show for Netflix about a women's wrestling show from the 80s. Google Glow. And so I looked it up and started watching YouTube videos. And then that led me to the documentary, which is now on Netflix. And so I got a taste of it immediately and was like, oh my God, this is incredible. Like, and how did I guess I was a little, just like a little bit too young to have watched it in the 80s. It was only on for 4 or 5 years. But I was a little bit like, how did I never know about this?
And have you gotten into, since you started watching those original, clips of Glow, to professional wrestling in general, or are you now a fan?
Yeah. Oh my God. Absolutely. Like, I mean, more than a fan, I just respect it so much now that we are having to break down moves and learn how to do them. The athleticism required for wrestling is incredible. And it's also the performance aspect of it too is so much different than I think I imagined in my mind. It's like high intensity physical improv, kind of, it's like two people really communicating in a ring and being so committed to their characters and then going on to just exhibit these like crazy physical feats one after the next. It's so exciting and exhilarating. We of all of the Glow Girls, before we started shooting season 2, we went to a big pay-per-view event for WWE at the Staples Center here in LA, and we lost our goddamn minds. It was the coolest thing to be at such a huge wrestling show. And I think it was just so exciting on so many levels because some of the matches would start, they'd all start out and we'd be like, oh, I can do that. I can do that. Whoa, I can't do that. I cannot do that. But that was fucking crazy. Oh, sorry. If I will try not to swear.
Swearing is fine.
Oh, okay. But it was
I,
fucking crazy.
there have been some real life pro wrestlers who have appeared on the show. Did you get to meet any at that wrestling show or since who you've gotten input from?
No, I mean, we didn't really meet anyone at that show, which I thought that we would, but it just was such a huge event that we didn't meet anyone then. Although the camera guy who was filming the WWE event came over to us at one point and was like, "Good ladies, I love your show. I've never seen a more accurate portrayal of wrestling on television." And we were like, that means so much to us, camera guy. Like, I'd like to assume he watches a ton of wrestling. He shoots the matches. Um, but we did see, we met a lot of the original Glow cast members who actually were at that WWE event as well. And that was really exciting to meet them and, hear a little bit about their journey on Glow. Some of them were like, I relate to Ruth. It took me a while to find my wrestling character and things like that. So that was like, it was unexpected and very exciting.
Now, of course, the series is very physical, with the, you and a lot of the other characters are, learning to wrestle from scratch. Ruth, of course, starts as, not an actress for wrestling.
Yes.
How much training, did you do, and how much of the stunt work did you do yourself compared to, what was done by stunt actors, maybe?
We did about a month of training, 4.5 weeks, I'd say, before we started shooting the first season. And then we just did another month of training before we started to shoot the second season, which we're in production on now. And we trained with Chavo Guerrero Jr., pro wrestler, legacy, his uncles, his father, his grandfather, all pro wrestlers. And he's incredible and so patient and gracious with us. We also have two stunt women, Shauna Duggins, who's our stunt coordinator, and Helena Barrett, who is my stunt double, and is also, they help stretch us out and break down the moves for us. So for season 1, it was a lot of basics. It was a lot of really starting from the bottom. Now we're here. Of like sitting on the mat and like, feeling the mat and sort of getting a minimal idea of what back bumps feel like, and then doing back bumps to big pads that are cushy and protected and things like that. And then slowly building on top of that into larger moves. Some of the girls have described Chavo as Mr. Miyagi from Karate Kid, because it sort of was like we were waxing on and waxing off. Like, we were like sitting on the ground doing this for so long, kind of just getting a feel for your whole back hitting the mat at the same time. And then next thing you know, we're like doing front 3/4 flips onto our back. And we're like, how did we know that? And he's just like, you've known all along, But in terms of what we do on the show, all the women, we all do our own stunts on the show. It was something that was really important to Liz Flahive and Carly Mensch, our creators, that we all do this training, and that all the actresses on the show really have a willingness to learn the wrestling and to go push it and just go after it, because it's so much, so much that's going on between the characters happens in the ring. So I think it just would have been such a headache to have to be constantly cutting away from people's faces. And then there's just a close-up shot of me like heavy breathing as if I just did a big move. It's so much more authentic to have us doing those moves. I do want to give credit to Helena Barrett and Shauna Duggins, who doubles Betty Gilpin. So they double the two of us, and they were essential in not only our training, but also just stepping in to give us a break if we were shooting a huge wide shot from far away and we've been wrestling for the last 5 hours, and they would come in and do some of these wider shots and wrestle, so you might be catching glimpses of their work on the show as well. And also just when you're shooting reaction shots or things like that, they would always step in and do the moves for us. So that was like really essential and became like kind of a tag team in our own way of, oh, I need a quick break. Are you sure this is not an essential show? Okay, go do it. But it really was a point of pride for Betty and I to learn all the moves, to know how to do all the moves for all the women on the show. And I would say 95% of what you see is us.
And working with Betty Gilpin, your co-star on the show, you're not only acting together as two actors normally do, but you're wrestling together in these scenes. How is that collaboration different than a normal kind of scene partner kind of dynamic that you've had in the past?
Well, I think first of all, we're so lucky in that we truly adore each other, and we talk all the time about how difficult the process would have been if we didn't get along and didn't feel so connected. Something about wrestling that is essential is like nonverbal communication in the ring and trust. You're really trusting your body in this other person's hands in a very literal way. I think that helped Betty and I and all the women on the show to create like a very deep bond immediately, especially since we all did our training together as a group. We just, we really trust each other and are able to be very vulnerable in front of each other. And for Betty and I think it has just helped us to add so many layers to the characters and to the performance, because Ruth and Debbie as characters have such a complicated relationship. And even though we find them often in season 1 in a moment where they loathe each other and can't even really look each other in the eye, they still have to be physically intimate in the ring and still really protect each other. So I think it became kind of one of the coolest things about playing these characters is getting to play their dynamic outside the ring and inside the ring and all the complications that go along with it.
Now, as you mentioned, you're in this large ensemble cast, predominantly women, all learning this skill together and acting together. And it's of course from Genji Kohan, who made Orange Is the New Black, another show with this incredible ensemble of women. What's that ensemble dynamic like on set?
It's a blast. It's loud would be the first adjective I would use. It's very loud. It can be overwhelming for some. I've never had more fun. It's really, it's really like we get silly, we lose our goddamn minds like on a daily basis. If we're all on set together, it's like constant bits and jokes, and then uh-oh, did I lose you? You're
Oh
still
no, I'm
there.
still here. I'm still here.
Um, at the same time, we really did all bond so well during training that it feels like a team. And I have never done sports in my life. So I've never been on a sports team. I've never felt this kind of camaraderie in a group where everybody is constantly building each other up. It's so supportive. And I always joke that even in scenes, I've never been on a set like this where we'll finish doing scenes that involve no wrestling, just acting. Maybe I have a big monologue in a scene or something, and we finish my coverage, and the girls all just cheer and are like, "Woo! Great scene!" Like pats on the high fives, pats on the back. It's such a funny approach to acting, like acting in a sports team with your girls. But I know that any one of these women would go to bat for me. I've never felt part of like a tighter group in that way. And because the show is also run by women, Liz and Carly, and our producers, Genji and Tara Herman, there is just this very cool, comfortable, light, but yet empowering feeling on set where it's our set. It's the women's set. Like, it really belongs to us, and we take ownership of it and of the ring and like of everything we're doing. And that has been so cool.
While training for season one and now season two, these wrestling moves, was there one that was hardest for you to pick up, or that you trained for, like a particular move that was hard to get?
I mean, honestly, a regular back bump is the bane of my existence. It's sort of, we talk about just taking a clothesline and taking your own bump, which is literally just falling onto your back in the ring. And it's such a tricky thing because when you fall the wrong way, it hurts. And you get this ringing in your head that's like, "Oh my God," and you did it to yourself. And it's so interesting to me that that's one of those things that I feel like comes and goes. There are days I feel super great at it, rarely. And then there are like other days where I'm like totally scared to do it. Um, and that's a kind of funny, interesting thing about wrestling. We did a month of training, and we continued our training while shooting the whole first season. And then obviously coming back for season two, we feel stronger. We remember a lot that we worked on last season, and physically our bodies remember it. But it is still just this journey. We're all still very green, very new to wrestling. So there just are good days and bad days. There are days you feel really strong and capable and fearless, and there are days where you're like, "Oh God, the clothesline's coming. I don't want to do it." But it's like such a basic move, but it really, I think a lot of the girls feel the same too. That's that one move that we're always like, "God damn, I wish I could nail it every time."
Yeah, and I can kind of imagine that, because with a back bump, you're just kind of trying to kind of override the body's instinct to protect itself and just fall flat on your back in a way that's safe, and that
Yeah. Don't put your arms back and break your wrist. It's like, and front bumps, I would say, are similar, where it just goes against your instinct. You're like looking down at the mat and thinking, "Okay, I'm just going to let my whole body fall full force onto this mat. Don't reach out your arms to protect yourself, because that's how you'll get hurt." It's a weird, I think in a lot of ways, we've had to, oh, it's so windy. We've had to retrain our minds in terms of that kind of stuff. And so much of our preliminary training was learning how to fall the right way when you're doing things. It's like you think it's more dangerous, but actually the way to protect yourself is to do things the way they tell you, to fall as one piece.
Now, one of the things that your character learns is how to embrace being a villain as part of her wrestling persona. Now, as an actor, yourself, is that something you'd also enjoy, getting a chance to break bad more often in the roles that you play?
Yeah, I would love to. I definitely would like that. It's so fun to play Zoya in the ring. I've just like never felt so exhilarated as hearing 200 background artists booing me was like the greatest feeling. So maybe that was me tapping into like, oh, I like this. I would love to play a villain, or just, I think with Ruth, I have been getting my hands dirty more than ever before in certain things that she's done as a character, and also playing this stuff in the ring. And it does make me crave, I think, playing edgier characters. Yeah.
And now that you have the experience playing Zoya in the ring, maybe if the Americans is casting for, needs another Russian spy for next season, you're all set.
Definitely. I'm ready to go. I think, yeah, tag team between both shows. Perfect. Netflix won't mind.
uh, Now, another thing they actually have in common, of course, they're both set in the 1980s, and there are some other shows right now that are set in the 80s. And what's interesting is that the show never feels really like a caricature of the 1980s. It feels much more nuanced in the wardrobe, the hairstyling, and the music. What's it like inhabiting that period?
Oh, it's so fun. I love the 80s clothes. I love the way that our show does the 80s. There are a few 80s shows right now, and I do feel like they're all exploring a different side. Stranger Things is really tapping into that nostalgic 80s, the Spielberg ET 80s, and our show has obviously got a bit more neon and drugs, which were also, very popular in the 80s. It's fantastic. I think I got to give a lot of credit to our art department, who makes everything feel very real. And even our DP, Christian Spranger, shot season 1, and he, I think, really set the tone of the show looking a little grittier and feeling kind of old and 80s, and not like being too oversaturated and kind of that fake poppy 80s that you sometimes see. That it sort of feels like what we think of as the 80s, but I think it's important in our show to feel like we're actually living in the 80s, and it's not a caricature of that era. And also our costume designer, Beth Morgan, who has done such a great job creating this landscape of 80s wardrobe, across all these different female characters. And that's a great thing about having so many women on the show, is you get to see like the rock and roll hairdressers and the punk teen and like the preppy valley girl and things like that. And Ruth obviously like is such a minimal type of person, but what does that look like in the 80s? And Debbie, who like has money, and it's just so fun to see that on the show. All the different outfits are kind of incredible.
In addition to Glow this year, this fall, you have roles in The Post and The Disaster Artist, both of which are considered awards contenders, but otherwise really couldn't have anything, couldn't have less in common.
Yeah, this is true.
Is it exciting to be able to, celebrate both of those films as they're coming out really close to the same time this month?
Yeah, it's incredible. It's kind of a crazy time because we're shooting the second season of Glow, so I'm just in literal heaven, working on my dream job, and then to have these two movies come out. I feel so proud to be a part of both of them. One of them directed by my brother-in-law, stars him and my husband, Dave Franco, and that movie is so special and unique, I think, in telling a story about this movie that's such a cult favorite, and really also just taking a look at people following their dreams, and Hollywood, and obviously we can all, everyone, I can relate to that whole story of wanting to follow your dreams and be a success in your art that you're creating. And then on the flip side, obviously working with Steven Spielberg is a dream come true, and I can check it off my bucket list, as well as working with Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks and about 20 to 30 other brilliant actors. It's such a strong ensemble cast. That actually is something I would say connects both of these movies. Very strong ensemble casts across the board, everyone doing incredible work. And The Post, I feel, is such a vital movie right now, talking about freedom of the press and exposing the government and things like that. I think it's very prevalent.
Now, one of the other roles that you're best known for, of course, was in Community, and fans, always rallied for 6 seasons in a movie for that, and it got the 6 seasons. So, do you think you would ever be interested in doing a movie sometime down the line if the opportunity ever arose? I mean, there are tons of revivals out, so you can never really rule that sort of thing out.
That's true. Everything is kind of coming back around. I think I would be open to it, but it would just have to be the right thing. I think so many things are coming back around, and some of them you're like, yes, I've always wanted more of this, and some of them you're like, huh, now there's more of that. And I guess I would want Community to be the former. So I think that would just depend on Dan Harmon, depend on the material, and if we could really get the whole group together, then I would be on board.
Or, if in 25 years maybe David Lynch wants to take a crack at it, that would be.
I wouldn't say no to that. I mean, wow, just the possibilities. The darkest timeline.
Oh yeah, honestly, if there were ever a sitcom I would think David Lynch could direct, I think he would fit in surprisingly well on Community.
Wow, yeah. I would not have thought of it myself. Now that you said it, it's I can't get it out of my mind. That would be crazy.
Well, I want to congratulate you on Glow and The Post and The Disaster Artist and season 2 of The Glow. Which fingers crossed for
The
that.
glow.
Or just Glow. I attached the definite article to that for some reason.
The glow.
I think it was because I had said. I think it was because I had said The Disaster Artist and The Post, so I was just kind of in that.
It's fine. It's fine. Nobody noticed. Nobody noticed. We'll edit it out. We'll edit it out.
Well, congratulations again, and thank you so much for talking to me today.
Absolutely. Thank you.